is Andrew Sullivan, Principal Sales Trader at Piper. Jaffray, Asia, there's only one story in town at the moment, isn't it? And that is, of course, Athens and the austerity budget getting passed.
Yes, I mean, they've passed it. I mean, I'm not sure that I think it's going to last or cause a solution. I mean, when you've got the ministers passing a bill, but outside the people are rebelling and rioting, I don't think it's a very good sign. And, of course, the key point about the austerity bill is it allows them to, it's easy to make budget cuts. It's difficult to raise income.
Yeah, you've got to get growth
revenue
there somewhere, haven't you? And you've been reporting on this all morning, John. I mean, you know, we're talking about, what, brutal cuts.
Yeah, I mean, the cuts altogether, minimum wage down 22%, 15,000 government posts being cut in the next 3 years, and, of course, pensions. So right across Greek society, hence they were bailing out. So before it was fairly easy going.
Well, I think
retiring early, below 60, and so on.
I'm shocked there aren't more riots.
Well, I mean, the trouble is they haven't been able to raise tax revenues, and that's going to be the key thing going forward. And obviously, if you're keep cutting people's incomes, that's more and more unlikely. And I think also that, if there was one thing we should have learnt from Lehman's and Bear Stearns is, you let the first one fail, so that, it's the uncertainty that the market doesn't like. And in reality, you look, if they do leave the euro, and I think that's highly likely. I mean, I got a piece from Slaughter and May lawyers telling me, 42 pages on how to adjust my contracts, etc. So when people are already, positioned and geared up and prepared for it to fail.
But is there even an exit mechanism? Don't you
Well,
have to
no,
read the treaty?
I mean, the treaty doesn't allow for one, but in reality, it will happen. You'll get a drachma. It'll be very undervalued to start with. And that will incite a lot of people to go there and spend money. If you remember the Thai baht crisis, the moment it happened, everybody was going to Thailand on holiday, everybody was trying to buy things down there, and the economy recovers.
Were you down in Thailand? I wasn't down in Thailand. No. I guess you were looking for an excuse to get to the sun, weren't you?
Any excuse.
It's also the contagion thing, isn't it? Who's next? Portugal, Spain, Italy, and it goes right across.
Well, once it's defaulted, at least we'll know which of the banks is holding, the CDSs and the other instruments that are connected with it.
But will we know? Will we ever know what exactly is on the balance sheets? Because most of these guys have never been transparent, regardless how severe some of these crises are.
Well, no, that's true. But once they have to take a hit, they take the hit. You can actually value things. There's a market then. At the moment, nobody quite knows what nobody quite knows what these things are worth because it's never actually been tested. So once they actually default, then we can get a testing mechanism. It's the same as it happened with Lehman's and Bear Stearns. Once they actually closed them, then everybody actually had to put their hands up and say, actually, I've got part of this. I'm holding that. That will happen the same with Greece, and then the rest of the market will know.
The tough part is always valuing that, right?
You're that convinced it's going to happen?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they can't raise enough revenue. At one point you have to say you can't pay your bills.
And there's no growth.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? You can't shrink your way into growth. I mean, it's a complete contradiction in terms. And
the flip side is that the ECB keeps printing money, and we get inflation in Europe, and the Germans won't allow that, and they're the drivers. So, it's which end of the stick are you going to go for? The people that can't pay their bills or the people that are driving the economy?
So what's the timeline then? When is this Greek exit going to happen?
Well, that I don't know.
Well, if you're that sure, then
you must have an idea. You must have an idea, yes.
Well, we're going to pay them another 130 billion. How long is that going to really last them? And then are we going to pay another 130 billion? So I would imagine that by the end of the next 6 months, they will have been out of the euro. Because realistically...
more than 6 months.
And what does that eventually mean for here in the Asia-Pacific region? What does that mean for China? The IMF says that to the extent that this situation gets even worse, well, that means half the GDP growth for China. Is that a severe estimate?
Buy Europe.
Well, to an extent, that's true. I mean, they would happily go in and buy assets.
Yeah,
that's what they want to do.
But let's go with
that sort of thing.
Let's go with the fresher headline, though, because I feel like Premier Wen has addressed this weekend, saying that we can't stay with status quo. You got to adjust with the times and be flexible in light of the weakening growth. So what does that mean for Chinese policy going forward?
Well, I think the things you've seen is the fact that, we saw in Wuhu them easing property restrictions and then rescinding that over the weekend, and then Premier Wen saying again that money's not going to go to property. What they want to do is direct money to the small, medium-sized industries, the people that are probably targeting exports, but probably even more importantly, targeting personal consumption there in China.
Is this a sign of more loosening? Because we got, of course, the inflation numbers, which some people think, okay, well, maybe the authorities are a bit hampered, but now the Premier Wen has come out and said this.
I mean, maybe just I'm playing my own theory, but from China's point of view, if it's going to ease, and if Greece defaults, then it eases and it's seen as a saviour to the world, because it's doing something positive. If it eases this weekend and then Greece doesn't, Greece defaults the week after, then it looks stupid because the whole market will go down and it's wasted that opportunity.
So you're saying China's being opportune? They want to be the white knights and all
of course
this?
They do.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
The good guys.
Yeah, and also
What
it's
about efficiency and just
it's in their
being
own benefit as
responsible to
well
their
because it
economy?
allows them to go and use their reserves and go and buy real assets, which is something that's important for China going
So
forward.
how do you advise investors then? Do you say just stick with the safe haven, stay away from risk?
I think it is. I mean, I
For the
think
next 6 months at least.
that and inflation. I mean, governments are telling us inflation is coming down, but every time I go out and buy another beer or a cup of coffee, it's gone up.
Where do you go to get your beer and
I
coffee?
think people have got to be very much aware that you can't print all this money.
Right.
The Bank of England's just spent another 50 billion. You can't print that amount of money and not get
And the
inflation.
ECB is and then, of course, there is the next country.
Yeah, and so, I mean, the things that people will look for is good brand names that aren't capital intensive. So that, you actually, your £50,000 in your bank account today is in 2 years' time still worth and can buy you the same things in 2 years' time. So you want good brand names.
To follow the buffers, for
Yes.
example.
Yeah.
Stock-wise, I thought it was interesting. There was a headline on Bloomberg this morning talking about how the premium for Chinese stocks versus Hong Kong's, those similar listed shares, is vanishing. The idea that A shares no longer have as much of a premium versus those H shares. How would you characterize that? Is that because money supply is tightening or more of this money is going into emerging markets?
I think, there's a number of reasons for that. I mean, I guess more people are able to invest into China now. So it used to be that it was very, sought after premium just because you couldn't buy them. But, more of them are listing overseas, so you've got access to them. And that's probably the main thing. But again, people are looking for the good brand names within China. It's a huge country. There's lots of different brand names there. It's a matter of still picking the good ones.
Yeah.
And where do you get your beer and your coffee? I'm curious. I asked that question earlier.
Oh, well, I mean, you go into Starbucks, coffee's still going up, unfortunately.
Yeah. How much is it? $6? Like a latte
I
still?
don't
Something like
know.
that?
Well, I was talking with somebody, this client this morning, who said he had a gin and tonic in London that cost him 17 quid. So,
Wow.
That's pricey.
Well, that's a very
you get your
expensive
coffee
hotel
for
bar.
free.
How badly do you need caffeine?
You get to stop. You can stop by any time. Thank you for that, Andrew Sullivan, Piper Jaffray, Asia.